Hollywood has spent the last 50 years lying directly to your face about what it means to be an elite sniper. They want you to picture a mysterious rogue wearing cool leather jackets and brooding in the rain, while looking incredibly handsome. They show a guy perched on top of a luxury skyscraper, drinking a perfectly hot cup of black coffee, waiting for a corrupt billionaire to step out of a limousine. He takes one clean shot, whispers a flawless, cinematic one-liner to himself, and disappears into the night like a moody ghost. The real job is not a movie. The real job is an aggressive test of human endurance, where your main enemy is not an enemy soldier, but your own bladder. Most people think sniper school is about practicing your aim at a shooting range, while an instructor nods in approval. In reality, the military selection process is designed to find out if you possess the psychological stability of a standard brick. They take highly aggressive, motivated soldiers and force them to sit completely motionless in a dark room for hours just to see who goes insane first. If you have even a tiny hint of hyperactivity or a desire to check your phone every 5 minutes, you will be thrown out of the program before you ever touch a bullet. Once you make it to the field, you quickly realize that your primary weapon is not your rifle. It is your ability to suffer in absolute silence. Imagine lying flat on your stomach in a ditch filled with liquid mud and rotting leaves for 4 consecutive days. You are not allowed to move your legs because even a slight twitch of your ankle could shift a single blade of grass. At a distance of 300 yards, an enemy observer looking through high-powered binoculars will spot that moving grass instantly. And the moment they spot you, they do not send a guy with a rifle to have a dramatic duel. They simply radio in an entire artillery battery to erase your specific zip code from the map. So you lie there perfectly still, while you actively share your underwear with 4 different species of local beetles. These insects have decided your body heat is a great place to start a family and build a small civilization. You can feel them crawling across your lower back, exploring your shoulder blades, and taking a casual stroll down your spine. And you cannot brush them away. Because moving your hand means a sniper team across the valley will put a hole through your helmet. So you just lie there, letting a very enthusiastic centipede explore your left nostril, while you contemplate every life choice that brought you here. You start questioning why you did not choose a nice, safe corporate job with air conditioning and free donuts on Fridays. Then comes the issue of basic human biology, which is the ultimate comedy killer in military movies. You never see a cinematic hero asking his spotter for a tactical diaper before sprinting into action. But in the real world, when you are confined to a tiny crawl space for 72 hours, you do not get bathroom breaks. The military does not pause the war because you need to use the facilities. You have 2 distinct options, and both of them involve losing every single ounce of your personal dignity. You either wear a highly specialized adult diaper designed for extreme long-duration military operations, or you simply accept that your uniform is about to become a very warm, very unpleasant ecosystem. It is a level of sheer physical discomfort that turns the most dangerous predators on Earth into highly trained, heavily armed toddlers. If you try to hold it, your internal organs will eventually stage a violent protest, causing muscle tremors that ruin your focus right when you need it most. So you just lie in your own filth, staring through a piece of glass, waiting for a target that might never even show up. The smell inside your hiding position quickly becomes a chemical weapon in its own right, mixing sweat, mud, and human waste into a toxic soup. Your muscles begin to atrophy after the first 12 hours of absolute immobility. Your left elbow feels like it has been permanently welded to the earth by a sadistic blacksmith. Your neck starts sending desperate signals to your brain, suggesting that decapitation might be an upgrade. Your hips freeze up, your knees lock into place, and your lower back begins to radiate a dull, throbbing agony that feels like a dental extraction. And through all of this physical torture, You have to maintain a heart rate that resembles a sleeping sloth. Because if your heart beats too fast, the tiny tremor in your chest will travel down your arm and shake your entire rifle barrel at extreme distances. A microscopic movement of your finger will translate into missing the target by 50 feet. You are essentially trying to become a rock that occasionally breathes. But staying completely still in a pool of your own sweat and shame is actually the easy part of the day. The real nightmare begins when you have to open a physics textbook and solve complex mathematical equations under extreme pressure. Most people think shooting a rifle is just pointing the crosshairs at a target and pulling the trigger. If you do that at a distance of 1 mile, your bullet will miss the target by the length of a football field and probably hit a very surprised tree in the next county. Long-range shooting is not an action movie. It is an advanced calculus exam where the penalty for failing is a court-martial or a body bag. First, you have to calculate gravity drop, which means understanding that your bullet does not fly in a straight line. The moment the bullet leaves the barrel, gravity treats it like a dropped potato, pulling it down toward the dirt with relentless force. If your target is 1,000 yards away, you might have to aim 20 feet above his head just to hit him in the chest. You are basically throwing a very fast, very heavy rock in a giant arc through the sky. Your spotter is sitting next to you with a ballistic calculator, analyzing the exact weight of the bullet and the velocity of the gunpowder. He is whispering numbers into your ear like a demonic auctioneer who accidentally wandered onto a battlefield. Then you have to factor in the wind, which is never consistent or polite. The wind blowing next to your face might be a gentle 5 miles per hour, but half a mile away. It could be ripping through a canyon at 30 miles per hour. You have to look through your scope and read the grass, the dust, and the heat mirage to guess exactly how the air is moving along the entire flight path. If your guess is off by even 1 mile per hour, the wind will push your bullet completely wide of the mark. It is like trying to throw a piece of paper into a trash can during a hurricane, except the trash can is 2 miles away and looking for you. Then you have to look at air density, which changes constantly based on the weather. Cold air is thick and heavy, creating a wall of friction that slows your bullet down, like it is traveling through room temperature butter. Hot air is thin, letting the bullet slice through the sky with minimal effort. Barometric pressure, humidity, and temperature all play a role in how much resistance the bullet faces. If it rains, the water droplets in the air will physically collide with the bullet, slowing it down and altering its trajectory. Altitude changes everything because high mountain air has fewer molecules to get in the way of your ammunition. If you train at sea level in California and deploy to the high mountains of Afghanistan, your entire brain needs to be recalibrated. If you do not adjust for the thin mountain air, you will shoot over everything you look at, sending your bullets into orbit. But the absolute peak of sniper mathematics is the Coriolis effect. This is the literal rotation of the planet Earth beneath your bullet while it is traveling through the air. When you fire a round at an extreme distance, the bullet detaches from the Earth's surface, but the target keeps moving because the globe is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. If you are shooting north or south, the Earth actually twists away from your line of sight during the flight of the bullet. This means you have to calculate the exact latitude of your position on the globe to adjust your scope for the spin of our giant space rock. If you forget to factor in the rotation of the Earth, you will miss the enemy commander and accidentally snipe a very confused goat 3 miles to the left. You also have to worry about the Eötvös effect, which means shooting east makes your bullet hit higher because it is flying with the Earth's rotation, and shooting west makes it hit lower. It is a level of math that would make your high school algebra teacher break out in a cold sweat and change careers. And you have to do all these calculations in your head while someone is potentially shooting back at you. And while your legs are completely numb from lack of circulation, you are sitting there trying to remember your trigonometry formulas while artillery. Shells are landing in the distance, and your spotter is arguing with you about wind shear. If you carry a 1, you save lives. If you drop a decimal point, your entire team gets compromised. The pressure is immense, and your brain is burning as many calories as a professional marathon runner, just from the sheer mental strain. Your eyes start to play tricks on you after hours of staring through the glass, a phenomenon known as target hypnosis. The bushes start to move, the rocks seem to breathe, and you swear that a tree just checked its watch. You have to blink slowly, clear your vision, and trust the cold. Hard numbers on your datasheet over your own lying eyes. If you manage to survive the math test. Congratulations! Your next reward is dressing up like a heavily depressed swamp monster and walking into the woods. This is the art of the ghillie suit, a garment designed to make a human being look exactly like a patch of dead weeds. A proper ghillie suit is not something you buy online with Amazon Prime or pick up at a local hunting store. It is a heavy, miserable canvas suit that you custom build by hand over dozens of hours of agonizing labor. You take strips of burlap and jute, fray them until they look like old hairy yarn, and tie them to a heavy-duty flight suit. Then you drag the suit through the mud, soak it in stagnant water, and bake it in the sun until it smells like a forgotten basement. You want it to look dirty, ragged, and completely devoid of human structure. Before you go on a mission, you have to spend an hour gathering local vegetation to weave into the netting of your suit. If the area has green ferns, you need green ferns. If the area has dead oak leaves, you need dead oak leaves. If you use the wrong kind of grass, a sharp-eyed enemy observer will spot the color difference from a mile away and call in an airstrike on your forehead. You have to constantly update the suit as you move through different environments. If you crawl from a pine forest into an open grassy field, you have to stop, pluck out all the pine needles, and replace them with fresh grass. By the time you are done customizing it, the suit weighs an extra 15 or 20 pounds of soggy, dirty material. And it does not breathe at all. Wearing a ghillie suit in the summer sun is exactly like wrapping yourself in a heavy winter blanket, stepping into a commercial sauna, and then doing push-ups. The temperature inside the suit can easily reach 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Your sweat has absolutely nowhere to go, so it just pools in your boots until you can hear a distinct sloshing sound every time you move your toes. But the humidity inside your face mask is so thick that you feel like you are breathing through a wet sponge on a tropical island. And because you are covered in natural vegetation, every insect in the forest views you as a giant, walking luxury apartment complex. Then ticks will find their way under your collar and set up permanent residency in your skin. Chiggers will burrow into your waistline, causing an intense, maddening itch that you cannot scratch. Mosquitoes will treat your face like a 24-hour, all-you-can-eat buffet, and you cannot swat them away because the motion will ruin your camouflage. You just have to lie there and listen to the high-pitched buzz of a mosquito next to your ear, knowing that it is currently drinking your blood and you are entirely powerless to stop it. If you move your hand to slap the insect, the sudden flash of movement will give away your position to an enemy scout. So you choose the mosquito bite over the sniper bullet every single time. There is an old military saying that you do not wear the ghillie suit wears you. It is a claustrophobic nightmare that forces you to confront every primal fear of being buried alive under a pile of rotting yard waste. If a bird decides to land on your head and look for worms in your burlap, you have to let it happen. If a stray dog decides to use your left leg as a fire hydrant, you have to accept your new wet reality with absolute silence. You are no longer a person with feelings rights or personal hygiene standards. You are a highly lethal bush that happens to possess a high-caliber rifle and an unbelievable amount of patience. Your skin will break out in rashes from the toxic plants you accidentally wove into your netting. Your face will be coated in mud and camo paint that mixes with your sweat to create a crusty mask over your eyes. You smell like a swamp monster that crawled out of a sewer, and your spotter smells exactly the same. The two of you are crammed into a tiny hiding hole together, sharing the terrible aroma and the miserable heat for days on end. It is the least romantic, least glamorous job in the entire military infrastructure. You are essentially a professional garbage pile that knows how to read wind currents. To truly understand how insane this job is, we have to look at the historical legends who did all of this without any modern technology. Today, modern snipers have laser, rangefinders, ballistic computers on their smartphones, and advanced thermal optics that can see through solid darkness. They have lightweight carbon fiber stocks and specialized ammunition manufactured with aerospace precision. But 80 years ago, the greatest snipers to ever live relied entirely on raw human willpower and a terrifying amount of pure spite. Take Simo Häyhä, a small Finnish farmer who became known as the White. Death during the Winter War against the Soviet Union. Simo did not have a high-tech rifle with a massive magnifying scope that could see a mile away. He used a basic bolt-action rifle with simple iron sights, the kind of gun your grandfather used to hunt deer in the woods. He actively refused to use a telescopic scope because the glass could catch the winter sun and create a tiny flash of light that would give away his position. A scope also required him to raise his head a few inches higher off the ground, which he considered an unnecessary invitation for an enemy bullet. He operated in temperatures that regularly dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the kind of extreme cold that freezes human tears instantly and makes steel stick to your bare skin like industrial glue to keep from being spotted by enemy patrols. Simo would wear solid white camouflage and pack the snow tightly in front of his rifle barrel so the blast wouldn't kick up a cloud of powder. He would also keep a mouthful of actual snow at all times while he was waiting for a target. Then he did this so his warm breath would not create a plume of steam in the freezing air, signaling his location to the enemy scouts. Think about that the next time you complain that your office thermostat is set to 68 degrees and you need to put on a sweater. This man sat in a frozen snowdrift for hours on end with a mouthful of ice, systematically dismantling an invading army with a piece of iron and wood. He accumulated over 500 confirmed kills in less than 100 days, treating a global conflict like a very personal, highly freezing game of hide and seek. He survived artillery barrages, counter-sniper teams, and entire whiteout blizzards, all while maintaining a diet that consisted mostly of frozen bread and sheer determination. Even when an explosive bullet struck him in the jaw and put him into a coma, he woke up a week later, on the exact day the war ended, looked at the doctors, and asked when he could go back to the front line. Then there is Carlos Hathcock, a United States Marine Corps legend who operated during the Vietnam War. Hathcock once volunteered for a suicidal mission to eliminate a high-ranking enemy general deep behind enemy lines in a heavily fortified camp. To get into firing position without being seen by the hundreds of guards patrolling the area, he had to crawl across 1,500 yards of an open grassy field. He did not run from tree to tree. He did not crouch in the shadows. He crawled flat on his stomach, moving only an inch at a time by pulling himself with his elbows. The crawl took him 3 consecutive days and 3 consecutive nights without a single second of sleep. He was dressed in a basic uniform with no armor exposed to the blistering heat tropical bugs, and constant enemy patrols walking just feet away from his head. At one point during this grueling trek, a deadly bamboo viper slithered directly over his chest. The venomous snake stopped, looked at him, and stayed there for several minutes, feeling the warmth of his body heat through his shirt. If Hathcock had flinched, twitched, or panicked, the viper would have bitten him, causing an agonizing death alone in the tall grass. Instead, he simply cleared his mind, slowed his breathing, and stared into the distance, establishing a level of emotional detachment usually, reserved for corporate human resources departments. He let the venomous snake crawl right past his face, waited for it to disappear into the brush, and then kept crawling toward his objective. When he finally reached his firing position, he took a single shot, eliminated the general, and then crawled all the way back out of the camp using the exact same slow method. That is the absolute standard of discipline required for this profession. It is not about who can pull the trigger the fastest or who has the loudest gun. It is about who can suppress their own human survival instincts the longest. And it is about becoming completely numb to fear pain and the basic desire to stay alive. When all the math, the camouflage, and the endless patience finally align, the result is something that defies basic human comprehension. In 2017, an elite sniper from Canada's Secret Joint Task Force 2 shattered the world record for the longest confirmed kill in human history. He was operating in Iraq, perched on top of a high-rise building, looking out over a vast, shimmering desert landscape. He spotted an enemy fighter at a distance of 3,540 meters. To put that into perspective for an American audience that is well over 2 miles away, it is the equivalent of standing at the top of the Empire State Building and trying to hit a specific telephone book resting on a park bench in Central Park. The target was so far away that he was completely invisible to the naked eye, appearing as a microscopic speck through the highest power magnification scope available. The sniper adjusted his heavy Macmillan TAC-50 rifle, a weapon that fires a massive 50 caliber round designed to punch through armored vehicles. He calculated a gravity drop that required him to aim hundreds of feet above the target, pointing his rifle into the empty blue sky like an anti-aircraft gun. He squeezed the trigger, and the rifle delivered a violent kick that felt like a mule kick to his shoulder. The bullet left the barrel traveling at thousands of feet per second, but the distance was so immense that it took roughly 10 full seconds for the round to reach the target. 10 seconds is an eternity for a piece of metal flying through the air. That is long enough for the bullet to listen to a podcast intro, evaluate its life choices, or contemplate its own existential purpose. After the sniper fired the shot, he could have stood up, stretched his stiff back, checked his emails, and ordered a coffee before the bullet actually arrived at its destination. During those 10 seconds, the enemy soldier had absolutely no idea he was in danger. He was miles away from any active fighting, standing in a relatively safe zone, probably talking to his friends. He could have tied his shoes, checked his phone, or decided to walk away to get a snack from a nearby truck. If he had moved just 2 inches to the left to scratch his shoulder at any point during those 10 long seconds, the bullet would have missed him completely. But he stayed perfectly still, and the bullet struck with absolute precision, ending the threat instantly. The sheer physics of that shot are so absurd that some military experts still refuse to believe it actually happened. The bullet had to pass through multiple different wind currents, moving in opposite directions at different altitudes. It had to cross varying thermal pockets of rising desert heat that warp the air like a funhouse mirror. And it had to curve around the physical bend of the planet Earth, because at 2 miles, the horizon is no longer flat. It is the military equivalent of throwing a needle from a speeding train and having it thread itself through a moving buttonhole 2 miles away in the dark. Yet when the target dropped, the sniper did not celebrate. There was no high five, no cinematic music swelling in the background, and no dramatic victory speech for the cameras. The sniper simply cycled the bolt, caught the hot brass casing in his hand, loaded another round into the chamber, and kept looking through the glass. Because in that world, a record-breaking shot does not mean the mission is over. It just means you have successfully notified every enemy machine, gunner and mortar team in the area exactly where you are hiding. The sound of a 50 caliber rifle is incredibly loud, and even with a suppressor, the acoustic signature ripples across the landscape like a clap of thunder. The moment you fire, a countdown timer starts in the enemy's head, and they will immediately begin scanning the rooftops with thermal scopes. If you stay in that position for too long, a mortar shell will land on your head before you can finish celebrating your new record. So you pack up your gear, slide backward into the shadows, and prepare to crawl for another 5 hours to escape the area. Glory is a luxury that real snipers cannot afford, because glory gets you killed. The true cost of being an elite sniper is not paid during the deployment, but during the quiet years that follow. When you spend years training your brain to analyze the world through a high magnification scope, you cannot simply turn that setting off when you return to civilian life. Your brain becomes permanently rewired to view everyday life as a series of tactical problems, wind currents, and potential target zones. Imagine trying to enjoy a simple morning trip to Starbucks while your internal monologue is actively malfunctioning from years of military conditioning. You walk through the door, and instead of thinking about whether you want a caramel macchiato, your eyes automatically scan the windows across the world. Street to check for high elevation firing positions. You look at the barista and unconsciously calculate the wind, velocity based on how the steam is rising from the espresso machine. You sit down at a table, but you refuse to put your back to the door because your survival. Instinct demands a clear view of every exit and every customer's hands. You see a guy in a heavy coat at the counter and find yourself analyzing his center of mass, wondering if your travel mug is heavy enough to serve as an improvised weapon. If someone drops a metal tray in the kitchen, you do not just jump. Your body prepares to dive under the table before your conscious brain can even process the sound. It is a mental prison that makes normal human interaction feel incredibly alienating, exhausting, and strangely hollow. You look at people worrying about their credit scores, complaining about the line at the grocery store, or arguing over a parking spot, and you feel like you are visiting from a completely different planet. They are living in a world of comfort, safety, and minor inconveniences, while you are still trapped in a world of trajectories, windage, and silent waiting. You look out the window at a beautiful park, and instead of seeing trees and flowers, you see dead space, cover, and concealment. You find yourself measuring the distance between telephone poles while you are driving down the highway, just to keep your range estimation skills sharp. Your family thinks you are just quiet and distant. But in reality, your brain is currently calculating how much bullet drop a .30-06 round would have if you fired it from your roof to the local high school football stadium. It is a heavy burden that stays with you long after the uniform is packed away in the closet. So what about you? Are you the type of person who could sit in a frozen ditch for 3 days with a mouth full of snow just to complete a task? Or do you start losing your mind and throwing a temper tantrum if your phone takes more than 3 seconds to load a video? But do you think you have the extreme mental discipline required to turn your body into a living piece of stone? Or are you perfectly content sticking to your comfortable office chair and your air-conditioned room? Let me know down in the comments if you could handle the tactical diaper reality, or if you prefer your comedy safely on a screen. Answering this helps me understand if my audience is made of stealth elite warriors or professional snack eaters. Because at the end of the day, holding your breath to take a long-range shot is the easy part of the job. It is learning how to breathe normally again when you get back home that takes the real work. And unfortunately, those high-tech military manuals do not come with an emotional recovery guide for a regular Tuesday afternoon. So until next time, try to keep your heart rate low. Watch the wind currents. And remember to look out for the bushes that look a little too suspicious. And if you see a bush checking its watch run,